Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, so Q-Control provides infrastructure software to improve the utility and performance of quantum computers. What we do is quite distinct from application development or developer tools, and definitely not consulting. So think of my talk as a zoom out on what Nathaniel was talking about. I'm going to first start off by talking about different approaches to reduce noise, which really is the Achilles heel of quantum computing. And then on the latter part of my talk, I'm going to talk about some of the products that we ship. So just a brief primer. So there, you may have heard, for the non-experts in this room, including myself, you may have heard of three approaches. You know, there's error suppression, there's error mitigation, there's error correction. I'm actually going to start off by talking about error suppression, specifically to combat noise and error and improve performance of quantum computers. What error suppression does is, think of machine learning methods. Think of extracting the very best out of the deepest advances in artificial intelligence, and using a whole bunch of tools and techniques to transform the way machine language is written to implement exactly the same algorithms that you are trying to do, but to incur literally no overhead, right? So, and every operation that you do increases the robustness of the system. So if I have to use a Star Wars analogy, what we do is it's like a force field where we're defending the qubits against noise. And you turn it on, and your system becomes instantly resilient, protecting the underlying information in the encoded qubits. And so the efficacy of error suppression methods is quite remarkable. We have shown improvements of thousands of times of the likelihood of achieving the success probabilities. And the nice thing about error suppression is it could be used directly in line with your quantum firmware. So as your quantum computer is operating, you have this error suppression that's defending your system against noise. And by far, we are the world-leading experts in this particular approach. The second one was error mitigation, which Nathaniel talked about. Involves a series of techniques. There's many ways to do this, but typically you run the same algorithm, and then you run slightly different versions of this target algorithm, and you combine the results to somehow extract the right answer through the errors, right? The reason we did not advocate this approach early on in the trajectory of our company is the overhead associated with it, and the overhead translates directly to costs, because as you guys know, accessing machine time is not cheap. The third one is quantum error correction, which, as some of you might know, is really a set of techniques where information is stored not just in one qubit, but what you do is you take the information and you distribute it out in a set of supporting qubits. So, and then what's called as the logical qubit. But again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. The more the amount of noise in your qubits, depending on the architecture, the more the number of logical qubits that you need in order to complete this logical qubit. And I think there was a previous talk that talked about an order of 1 million qubits to get error correction just right, and that's a long way away. So let me just summarize this particular section by saying, look, there's no particular method that's accurate, but in our particular view, when you combine error correction with the very best you can get out of error suppression, now the whole thing just comes to life. Why would you not combine every tool that you have to push your hardware to the absolute limit so you can get to a quantum advantage? Right. So one more thing that I will say is that in the maybe 6 years of operation of our company, we have seen a posture change in hardware companies. Every hardware company starts off by saying that they can do the software and they can do the hardware, and eventually what they realize is that the problem is really hard, right? And then you need to be able to focus. And then so we are starting to see this posture change where where the hardware vendors, including some of the people who are on stage with me, the companies that they represent, they want to combine the very best of software together with hardware techniques, and this just not just limited to the large companies, but also to the small to mid-sized companies. And watch out for some very exciting announcements from us in the next few weeks to months. The second part of my talk really focuses on the products that we built. We have quite a portfolio. The important thing about Q-Control is we don't ship research code. We are in the business of shipping commercial-grade, professionally engineered tools and high quality to get enterprises to actually get started, not research code. And starting with Black Opal, this is a slight deviation. We are not in the education business, but very early on in the journey, we saw that there was a big need for upskilling, and we were quite frustrated with the education resources that were out there. So we hired a world-class design team led by Chris Perry, who wrote a series of books for children. And there's this beautiful interactive tool called Black Opal. It's got 10,000 users and more counting, and including enterprises who've used it. This list includes people like British Petroleum, Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst & Young, Australian Army, Transport for New South Wales, L3 Harris, and the list goes on and on. And this tool specifically addresses the need of enterprises to get their employees to be quantum conversant. Then on to FireOpal, I had talked about error suppression. The important thing is we have an automated pipeline that basically runs in a zero config way. We have taken out all the complexity for you guys. We don't talk in the language of research with enterprises because we take care of all the complexity underneath the hood. And the value is very, very clear. FireOpal lets you run circuits that are 10x deeper, and the costs associated with the moment you start using FireOpal, we released this tool earlier this year, is we cut your machine access cost by sometimes by 100x, right? Just because there's no overhead involved in the way error suppression works. And finally, I have to say that, look, if you're trying to reinvent the wheel and if you're trying to make error mitigation, error suppression work, it's really, really hard, as Netanel will attest. This stuff is extremely specialized and will take years for you guys to pull together from scratch. On top of that, once you've done it, there's also the configuration. There's so many knobs to be tuned, it's just impossible. So our customers who use FireOpal, they love this automated sequence, and they're starting to see some great results. Customers include Capgemini, Xerox PARC, Wells Fargo recently, and many, many more that we are not able to reveal yet, but stay tuned for some exciting announcements there as well. And then for the sake of completeness, I'll also mention that we have a set of professional tools. If you are an expert hardware user and you want to optimize and automate your workflows and hardware as you're working with it, we have tools to do that. We introduced recently a package called ScaleUp, where we throw our best experts to use those tools and get the most out of your hardware in a really short time, right? I mean, companies have including the people here on stage, they have very aggressive roadmaps to bring those. What we do is we address the problem of how do you scale up your qubits in the shortest possible way, and we work with them. And of course, our flagship embedded product, where our product is natively embedded in the code of your hardware, and what that does is it provides an experience that is completely transparent to the end user, and so your quantum computer just operates at a much higher level of performance. So let me sort of conclude my my talk by saying that really we have one of the world's leading quantum, if not the leading quantum control teams. And we do world-class research, but we really speak the language of products. We take the complexity out, and we don't operate as a research team necessarily, and we have a tremendous product management and product development team, and that gives us a tremendous operating advantage. Hopefully this gives you a picture of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind.